Today, I am joined by Deevo Tindall. He's an entrepreneur, holistic branding strategist, and content creator. We're going to talk about hiring and firing clients.
And it really starts with you and your business and really having some clarity around who you are and the value that you add to the world.
We get better clients when they find us.
Obviously, the win-win scenario is we want people to come to us. People don't buy your product, they buy the experience they get with your product. And for me, communication is everything. I've been relatively blessed in the types of clients that I've had.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Frustrated by Your Marketing podcast. Today, I am joined by Deevo Tindall. He is the founder of Fusion Creative in North Carolina. I'm assuming that he works with clients all over the country. Usually that's how it works in the digital space. According to his bio, he's an entrepreneur, holistic branding strategist, and content creator. He's a master storyteller, master photographer, which I'm super interested in. Took a look at his website a little while ago, and it looks like he shoots with Canon, so I give a thumbs up to that. And his firm also does web design, social media, SEM. He does it all. And we're gonna talk to him maybe a little bit about that. And our specific topic is we're going to talk about hiring and firing clients. And this applies to even more than just an agency hiring and firing a client, but whatever business you're in, whether you're in the restaurant business, whether you own a firm, whether you're in an internal marketing team. Working with the right people is super, super important. Knowing how to find them, knowing when to get rid of them is important. So we're going to kind of go through that today. So welcome, Deevo. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Jim, for having me. I have to ask, though, do you have someone in a box nearby trying to escape? I hear a lot of thumping and...
Yeah, I...
Have you captured a small animal in your office?
That would be my 3-year-old. And so normally, I'll give a plug to software that I can't use because I don't know. So you just told me a second ago that you do 100 of these a year. So you've probably used Riverside before, and for whatever reason, Riverside does not work well with Crisp, which is my favorite plugin of all time. It's an AI noise reduction plugin. So if we were talking on Zoom, you wouldn't be hearing all of that. It doesn't work. But when we get to post, most of that gets removed. So I apologize.
No worries. Go get that kid and put her in the box.
Yeah. So like I said, we're going to talk about, kind of just dealing with clients. One thing I always say is I haven't applied for a job in over 20 years, but I go on job interviews, dozens of times a year when I'm dealing with clients. So I've gotten really good at fleshing people out, looking for relationships that are going to be good and that are going to work. I assume you're in a similar boat to that.
So when you mean you've gone on job interviews, what do you mean? You mean interviewing other people or?
No. So when when we're, pitching a client, I consider that a job interview in a way. Like, I show up, I do my prep, I research the company, and I get ready to apply for that job or that client in this case. So I'm really good. I've gotten really good at that. And, in addition to being really good at, saying how good our firm is, you get good at knowing who's not going to work. I think that's something that was harder to do when we were starting out and money was a little bit tighter. You'd make things work and you'd convince yourself that it was going to be a good relationship, and usually it wasn't when you kind of got those warning signs. And so that's been valuable for me as I've grown over the years. Doing it so much. Just that confidence and knowing that, not every, there's thousands and millions of firms and thousands and millions of companies, and you don't have to work with everybody. You just have to find the ones that are right for you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I don't know how long you've been in business, but I think early on, especially for early entrepreneurs, you're so excited to make some money and so excited to share your craft or whatever wisdom or whatever it is you do with the world that you just sort of bend over backwards, arguably so, in order to get your business launched and going. And I don't know if that's necessarily a wrong thing to do. I don't want to say that, this is something you should completely avoid. I think I'm hoping for this conversation that we can sort of reframe how you navigate those client relationships early on so that you can avoid some of the pitfalls and the misery that hiring bad clients will lead to ultimately. So, and it really starts with you and your business and really having some clarity around who you are and the value that you add to the world so that you're clear on the type of people that you want to connect with and help them. Because again, I mean, just think of yourself in a personal relationship. I don't know if you're married or, if you have friends, I'm sure you have all those of the above, but you don't hang out with people that bring you bad energy. You don't marry or partner romantically with people that give you bad energy, because that's just going to bring you down. So, what's the saying? You're a byproduct of the 6 people you hang out with the most often.
Oh, I've never heard that, but that's great, and you're right.
Yeah, you become there's a saying, and I'm kind of butchering it, but you become a byproduct of the 6 people that you often most surround yourself with. It's just a fact of life. You take on their energy, you take on some of their quirks and their personalities, and you all just sort of intermingle and commingle. And so that's no different with your clients that you hire. The type of people, at least in the business that I'm in, where I'm working very intimately with clients on a one-on-one capacity, helping them grow their business, it's been fundamental for me in reshaping my narrative so that I'm actually hiring somebody that I can really help and metaphorically get into bed with and help them grow their business. Because if we have bad energy together, it's just a recipe for disaster.
It is. And, one of my notes I took sort of as I was prepping for this is, got to work with people you like. There's millions of clients. Walk away. You get that vibe. I've had clients that they expect too much. They don't respect your time. They'll contact you at off hours when it's unimportant. That unrealistic expectations, and that it's toxic. It eats away at you, and it affects the clients that are treating you well too. Which is the other thing to remember, is that you've got other people that are part of your company or part of your life, and you don't want these few bad apples to affect the rest.
Well, you're doing your client a favor as well. I mean, you don't need to come out and say it, but you're doing them a favor by making sure that you're selectively matchmaking with the right type of people, because, if your values don't line up, and it's really important to understand your business's core values, because you want to try to find people that also are in alignment with some of those values. Like, if integrity is big to you, but your client doesn't give a shit about it, you probably don't want to work with somebody who doesn't have values of integrity, if that's one of your primary core values. So it's really important about creating this. I think first and foremost, it's really important that you understand your core values as a business owner, and what do you stand for, and what are your sort of where do you draw the line in the sand, if you will, on some things. And then once you have your core understanding, it's really important that you do some exercises around understanding what your client profile looks like, and what are their factors, and what are their business needs, and what's their communication style, and how do you align with that space so that you're all sort of moving in the proper direction. Because otherwise, again, you're doing them a disservice if you take them on as a client, but you're completely polar opposites on every end of the spectrum, and how you align with not only running your business, but your personal values, your ethos, your credos, all the things that make you who you are. And if you guys are going in disparate directions, it's just, you're not going to be able to help them grow their business, because they're going to get annoyed with you as well, just like you might with they.
Oh, absolutely. So I've been, this firm I started with my wife 20 years and a couple months ago. Prior to that, I had my one post-college job for 3 years, and it was an up or out type of job. It wasn't corporate, but it sort of had a corporate structure. It was smaller than that. And I was so amazed watching great people not fit and then go on to do amazing things. So again, they didn't fit. That company had they've softened over the years, but they had very specific and in a lot of cases unreasonable expectations. And it didn't mean you weren't good, and it didn't mean that they weren't good either. It just meant that there wasn't that meshing. It just, they didn't fit. And so some people excelled like crazy there. And a lot of people, again, it was an up or out, would go on and do amazing things elsewhere. So you just have to, dig deep and realize it's not you. It's just, it wasn't a good fit.
It's like the old middle school breakup. It's not you, it's me. It's just
right. Exactly. But it's true. And so you're right. You're doing them a favor. You're doing yourself a huge favor too. And, I've gotten better over the years at spotting it in advance. It's at the beginning, it would take a while. I've actually moved to, I don't know how you work, your pricing structure, but I try not to take big, upfront payments, usually the half upon, start, half upon completion. I've moved away from that. We moved to a subscription model just, for a number of reasons. One is it builds long-term relationships, which is part of my, brand value. and what I want, but also it's much easier to get out. It's like, no harm, no foul. You just, didn't work out. Where, you either paid me nothing yet so far, or you paid me a couple $100 and I can walk away. Versus if you're kind of entrenched, you've gotten this big payment. I don't want to be beholden to that and make incorrect decisions because of it. So yeah, it wasn't the main reason I did it, but it also is a nice added value to it.
I'm curious, how does that work? I'm curious on that, the subscription model. How does that work exactly?
So, I don't know it depends on how complex a website is, but instead of charging $5,000 or $10,000, there's a small upfront fee of a few hundred, and then the even smaller couple $100 fee per month, which covers their hosting, the management, sort of WordPress management. We do everything in WordPress, and also, depending on which package they're in, updates to, for their content. And then there are, certainly add-ons. If they're on a major SEO campaign, it's more than that. But again, it allows for that. It allows for that long-term relationship, which is something that I really want. And for them, this is, sort of their part of picking us as a firm. They're less afraid to call, because what I've found is there was that fear of people in web, this thing that nobody understands except for if you're in the industry. Everyone's sort of nervous about it. If you don't know anything about it. And if I call Jim, is it going to cost me $300? So now they can call and ask questions that are ridiculous or make a lot of sense, and they don't have to worry about it. So
interesting.
It also helps with that as well.
Interesting. Well, I mean, there is no secret sauce per se. Every business operates differently. And so it's your job as a business owner, right, to come up with programs like this subscription model that you feel enables you to connect with your audience on a deeper level for longevity, for relationships, et cetera. And every business is different. You referenced the corporate situation. I worked in the corporate world for many years as well. And I always remember once I was sort of in bed with the company for a few years, the sort of circulating, never-ending cycle of new hires and trying to find the right people for the right positions. And I often, and I had conversations many times because I knew the human resources director. I had many conversations with her because some of the people that they were hiring were working for me in my division. And it didn't seem like there was any rhyme or reason to how they went about hiring people. It was just sort of like, what do they look like on paper? And, let's just get them in as quickly as possible. And I would often ask her, why don't you guys create profiles around this job so that when you're interviewing these people, you have some biometrics on this is what it's going to take to succeed in this position. And these are the type of qualities that we're looking for, as opposed to just here, we're looking for a flat resume of qualifications. I would want to see more of some of the biometrics around, like, what does this persona feel like in this position? Because then you'd be able to start targeting the right type of employees that you would hire that would be better fit for that specific position, as opposed to just like, we're just going to hire everybody and just try to make them fit. And that does work. Like you touched on, there are people that have been hired for positions that, they'll succeed anywhere. There are people that you can throw them in the water and they'll learn how to swim. But I would argue that if you can find a way to optimize that hiring process from the get-go and find people and target people that are more inclined to fit into a very specific role, as opposed to just trying to make a round hole fit into a square peg type of thing, you'll probably have much greater success. It's sort of similar to like the education system. Sorry, going down a rabbit hole, but like not every kid learns the same way, right? I always never understood this. I never understood public education. And I don't know how old you are, but I come from the days when education was not as crazy as it is now in terms of like completely doctrinated. But I never understood why they expected everyone to take the exact same curriculum and have the exact same standards, take the exact same standardized tests, and have the exact same type of output. Like, not everybody learns the same way. Not everybody has the same type of interest. So wouldn't it make more sense to sort of try to find different types of curriculum and different types of career paths for kids at an early age so that you could optimize their interests and their explorations and their talents, as opposed to saying, you got to do it just like everybody else. Like, this is the way we're going to do it. And everyone has to be trained and educated the same way. And it never made any sense to me. So sorry about the rabbit hole.
It's true. Yeah. I don't know what your take on vouchers is, but I love the concept of schools being allowed to, more magnet schools, more, STEM schools, more art schools, more, if the money follows the kid. Right now it's harder because you either have to pay for that or you have to get lucky to get in the lottery. But if there were more of those, our current schools would get better and we'd have more choices, and it'd be excellent for kids. You might have to do a little bit of driving. The buses are going to go all over the place, but if you do it for your kid, right? I mean, I drive them anywhere, and we do it for sports. Why wouldn't we do it for school?
Well, you don't even have to have a magnet program. The public school system in of itself just needs to be completely reprogrammed and broken down and reassembled, because what they're doing now, speaking of, I'm sorry, we're going down. This is my new shirt. I stand for critical thinkers is my new shirt on my t-shirt line. The education system is not designed to create critical thinkers. It's designed to create automatons who from day one are sat into a row, a single file row. They're put blinders on. They're not allowed to talk to the left. They're not allowed to talk to the right. They have to stare front and center at one teacher and learn a standard curriculum that not everybody can learn from, that's boring as shit, that doesn't really teach them real world tactics, any sort of emotional intelligence, critical thinking. It's thrown out the door. Like even art now and whatnot has been thrown out of the curriculum. So, this is not a conspiracy. Like I truly believe that education in of itself is designed to not create critical thinkers, not create people who are entrepreneurs. It's designed to teach people and train people to be robotic machines that go through school sitting in their rows, graduate, go to college, sit in their rows, graduate, go to the cubicle, sit in their rows, and just sort of pay homage to this idea of like producing for the corporation the rest of their life. So sorry, that's another rabbit hole.
No, it's true.
Keep me on target, Jim.
No, I'm going to go back. I'm going to tie this all in. I got it. That's perfect. So You mentioned before about hiring, right? And so I don't know if you've ever heard of the book Recruit Rockstars. It's a little kitschy.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I know what it is.
Have you read it? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you get his newsletter? I'm going to forget the name of the author right now, but I'm a big fan. His newsletters are fun. He pulls in current event topics, and it always ties back to recruiting, obviously, but that's kind of his thing. But one of his core principles is, two of his, the two that sort of apply here is education doesn't necessarily line up with job success. So that ties into your education part. And more importantly, what does is DNA. So not necessarily have you done the job before? Sometimes that's actually worse. But how do you fit? Do you fit with the culture of this company? And I love it. I mean, I've read the book a couple times. I sort of refresh it every time we go to hire because, he's smart. I like how he thinks. And that's the same thing with hiring a client, right? Or when a customer comes to your restaurant, like if a customer comes to your restaurant and you're trying to, your marketing is saying fine dining and you're serving greasy burgers, well, you've done it wrong, right? Who do you want to come? Tell them what you're going to give them, set those expectations. And if you don't, well, then that's kind of on you. And then if you're looking for that DNA and that fit and you market it well and you hire for it well, or you recruit for it well, then all of a sudden that's when the magic happens, because you've got this, everybody's happy. You're loving your meal. You've hired the best possible employee. You've been working with this client for 10 years because you guys, it's great to work with them. And maybe even, you talk to them about personal stuff too, because you just like them as a person.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point. And attracting the right client, it starts with, I think a lot of people look at it from a reverse perspective. And I don't know that I'm right on this, but it seems to work for me. Instead of trying to make your product fit your client's niche, I suggest to everyone I work with is let's reframe that and let's be very, very crystal clear on what we offer.
Right.
What do we create? What value do we offer? What problems do we solve? And once you have some clarity around that, all of your brand messaging, all of your marketing needs to center around what do we do really, really freaking well, and why are we passionate about it, and what's our North Star around it? Because what that does when you start sharing that message, whether it's through social media or on your website or showing up a podcast like this, the people that hear that message, they're sort of observationally biased to be inclined with that message already because that's what they're looking for. So it's sort of like you never see a red Toyota 4Runner until someone says, "Hey, I just bought a new Toyota Toyota 4Runner," and the next day you drive to work and all you see is red Toyota 4Runner. So it's like that's how human science works. Like the psychology of it is when you start to hear the messages that you're familiar with, the things that resonate with you, you start to see that. And whether you're on social media or a website, when you're talking about the things that you love doing, then that's going to connect with the right type of audience. Does that make sense? And so
Absolutely.
Instead of trying to make your situation fit for them, it's really important to make sure that you're very clear on what you do and what you do well.
Oh, absolutely.
Jeff Hyman, by the way, was the author of that book.
Jeff Hyman. So you got, okay, good. Yeah. I love him. I think he's great, even though I forgot his name. We'll link to him in the show notes because he does a good, and you should subscribe to his newsletter. Not necessarily, I am not currently hiring, and most of the time I've been getting the newsletter, I am not hiring, but I get some of my news from him, like sort of celebrity news and like fun little tidbits that are out in the world that he, puts in a good dad pun and somehow ties it into hiring, and it's kind of cool. So
well, he talks about some of my core takeaways from that book, if I may continue with that. That really resonated with me is he very specifically talks about your hiring process as a sales and marketing tool rather than a human resource function, which is exactly what I was just saying. It's like, and I used to have that conversation with my HR director. I'm like, why do you not look at this from a position of reframing this job description so that it appeals to the right audience, as opposed to trying to find the right audience and making them fit into that? And so, and the whole idea around of like interviewing people just to find really highly talented people to fit a role, that's not also necessarily the best way of going about that, because sometimes the most talented people are going to have the highest attrition. And if you're looking for someone who's going to sit there and work in a capacity that you want them long term, you probably don't want to hire the most talented person for that position. So again, different conversation, but some of the stuff that he talked about is very relevant to what we're talking about right now. I agree.
Yeah, no, he's good. I hope he writes something else, because I don't know. Usually it's funny because he only has the one, but usually when someone writes that book, then they rewrite it 30 times. But I'd be interested in like a more modern take on it. I think it's 12 years old.
Maybe it's time for you to write that book.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, we'll see. Okay, so one thing I've found through some mistakes is that we get the better clients when they find us. And I don't know if you've had this same experience. So we've done, we've been doing it for 20 years. We've done it all to try to get clients. But when we've done, I don't want to say cold calls, but when we have picked a niche, made a call, sent an email, followed up, when we get that client, we've now had to convince them two things. So they need marketing. We've had to convince them about that, and then, hey, pick us. Versus somebody has decided they need marketing, they need a website, they need, whatever services we offer, and then we get ourselves out there for them to find us. And I feel like something about that two-jump process, at least for us, doesn't work. And it's not that I'm never going to try that again, but anytime I've tried it, I'm usually disappointed. And that person usually expects more, maybe because I've come to them first. So maybe, now they have the upper hand. I don't really know the logistics behind why it hasn't worked, but it hasn't for me. So I don't know if you've ever had experiences like that as well.
Yeah, I think, that now we're diving into some marketing and branding, which is, what I love most. I think there's a way to optimize both sides of that coin, if you will. So if you're messaging, again, obviously the win-win scenario is we want people to come to us, right? Like that's the whole point of marketing is being able to share your message to the right audience. And we have never before in the history of business had more opportunities at our fingertips, from social media to website to search engine optimization to paid advertising, all those things. So if you can set up your foundation properly so that people are finding you, and then use the tools in the digital marketing realm to make sure that message is being broadcasted out to the right audience, you will not only be able to ping the right type of people through your proactive marketing, and it goes back to that beacon. It's like you put out the bat signal, the right people are going to see it, and then those are the people that you're actively targeting. They're the ones that are going to resonate with that message and then come to your site and reach out to you. So I would say from my perspective, you can't just build it and they will come anymore, because there's so many people you're competing with. Like literally, I mean, dude, how many times do you just go open up your phone and you find a product and you'll find like an hour later, you just scrolled through 600 different feeds and you stopped at like 4 or 5 of those in that hour time frame. It was like, like something caught your eye, some message, some color, some photo, some video, right? And so everyone is doing the exact same thing, all 8 billion people on the planet. And so it's not enough to just put your message out there. That's the first piece. But I think from my perspective, the second piece is being very, very clear on targeting the type of people that you want to connect with through your proactive efforts as well, but making sure that your messaging is still standardized so that when you do target them, they do come back and want to spend some time with that make sense what I'm saying?
It does. And yeah, I think so. I think that the sort of difference for me is not that we're not like, so the advertising piece of what we do, getting our name out there with SEO, getting our name out there with, digital ads, getting our name out there with, in some cases with print ads, doing this podcast, that's getting our name out there. So the idea is they see us, they see you, they want marketing, they want web design. They're like, I think I want to work with Jim. I think I want to work with Deevo. So it was the piece that didn't work for me. And, I'm thinking about it all the time. And maybe it's about figuring out if the person is already kind of sold on marketing. Maybe our mistake was we were selling too low in that person's process, in their brand. I don't want to convince them that they need our service. I want to convince them that we are the best at it. And I think that was the piece that was like the real crux for me, because once I had to convince them, like, hey, your social media would be better if you use us. Your photography would be better if you used us. But they didn't even know they wanted that. Then all of a sudden we weren't, our expectations weren't matching what their expectations were. Our expectations were to treat them like our clients. Their expectations were we were going to save their business. And that's a bad place to start. And so it just never worked well. But again, I mean, it's not like I did it tens of thousands of times. It's, was a dozen times. But it always seemed to not be, again, the relationships didn't work in those cases. So I sort of backed out.
Well, I think, I don't disagree with anything you just said. I don't want to sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but for me, where I found sort of my eureka moment was when I realized that instead of chasing people and trying to get them to fit into my paradigm, I had to clean up my paradigm first and be crystal clear on what it is that I wanted to offer.
Right.
And then once I started to learn how to broadcast that message properly, the right people started finding it because I was proactive in targeting them. But then when you're hiring those people, I think sometimes we get overexcited to just hire somebody because it's a big price tag, or, you just made a big sale or whatever it is. But you didn't take the time to set really clear expectations up front in that relationship on, the value that they were looking for, and how do you match that so that we're the value alignment, right? Making sure that those value alignments are very crystallized. And then having sort of the wherewithal, because it's weird. We talked about this when we first met. You sort of have this little devil and angel sitting on your shoulder, right? In every situation. Like, it's true. I know it's a funny metaphor, but it really is true. And if you listen to yourself, it really kind of is accurate most of the freaking time. And I can remember many times early in my business where we would hire somebody, and it was a big contract, and I was like, I remember going home and talking to my partner at the time, and I was like, you just don't really feel like I'm going to be able to help this person.
Right.
And you sort of saw the red flags early on in the process. And instead of listening to yourself, whether it was unrealistic demands or poor communication standards or mismatch in values, I don't want to keep talking about that. But really, you can't underestimate the importance of trusting your instincts and the long-term benefits of being able to say no when you realize early on that that's not going to be a good fit. Because as we shared stories, I didn't listen to myself. I was like, okay, like, this is a multiple six-figure contract. I'm going to take it. Like, we're just going to make it work. Like, I was like, I'm just going to learn how to swim model instead of like, I don't really feel like this is going to be the right person. And it was really clear early on, as soon as the honeymoon was over, that this was going to be a nightmare for us, from overextending my team to taking phone calls when I was on vacation to text messages in the middle of the night to just like all sorts of stuff. And it wasn't I'm not disparaging the client. Like, they were who they are. Like, they're very successful at what they do, and their people love them. But those values that they sort of was the body of their ethos, they weren't in alignment with mine. And by hiring them and not listening to myself, I just set myself up for disaster. And it wasn't like we didn't do a good job with the client because we kicked ass with it. It was just like, instead of being able to cruise together on this project, we were like literally digging trenches and covering asses and recycling and re-looping and all these sorts of things, because it was just never enough. Like, no matter what we did, it was never enough. And I knew that early on that that's how it was going to be. And instead of trusting my gut, I just was like, okay, I'm bending over, taking one for the team.
Right. It's funny. So you mentioned, so that was a higher paying client, but that I see that most often in your lower paying client. There's I've heard a million times, but the clients that pay you the least expect the most. And I think that, it doesn't mean that bigger clients don't expect the most too and have unrealistic expectations, but it's very common that your drain is on a client that's very unprofitable or barely profitable. And one of the things I look for is, are they looking for me to be a miracle worker to save a business, or are they looking for me to help grow a business that's, not that we're business coaches, but in a way, if you're doing this right as a marketing firm, you're a little bit of a business coach. You should be asking questions about where's your money coming from? You just asked me, we had a client years ago that was a physical therapy company, and most of the work we did for him was launching like new little niche services. And we never marketed physical therapy. It was always MS physical therapy, or I can't even remember what the other ones were, but they are for Parkinson's disease and all these little niche ones to kind of grow not his business. And we never helped him grow his business. And so, that was me, maybe being a little green and not putting my foot down, but you can't let that creep happen. And again, like I said, we're not business coaches, but we should ask those questions. Like, why are we doing this other thing when you make 95% of your money from physical therapy? Shouldn't we be trying to grow that, or at least keep that consistent, at least keep that brand message out there? So it's, there's that's why, again, work with people you like. So you can ask those questions. And so that as you do it more, you'll have those confidence to ask those questions and to kind of push back a little bit. Clients, not always right. Obviously, sometimes you just have to do what they say, but you should at least say, I'll do this, but just want you to know, I think we should be spending resources over here. If the goal is to help your company grow, this is what, in my expertise, you should be doing.
No, the client is not always right at all.
Yeah.
The key to that paradox is finding clients to work with that understand it's a team collaboration, and that all of us are in this together, and your success is my success and vice versa. And they understand that. And that's not to say that you need to be obstinate and stubborn and be, this is my way, because I'm not saying that. I'm not saying, no, this is my way. I'm an expert. It's going to be this way, and this is how we're going to do it. It's saying, okay, you hired us because we're the experts at what we do. We're going to stay in our lane so that you can stay in your lane and grow your business and do the things that you do best. And so, and when you both have a mutual understanding of that, which happens at the outset of this relationship, you're setting yourself up for success, because when you do hit road bumps, or you do have hiccups, or you do have disagreements, if you will, because it's human nature, you're more inclined to have a discussion about it, to strategize about it, to have a collaborative input from both sides, to say, okay, here's where we are in this disagreement. How do we find the way through this more cleanly and succinctly together, as opposed to be like, no, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right type of thing. So right. Yeah, that whole it's a very interesting sort of navigation that happens when that happens. But as to your point, if you can find the right type of people to connect with and hire, and you are hiring, make no mistake about it, you're hiring just like they are, hiring the right clients. Anytime you have those disagreements or those whatever they are, bump ups against, impediments in the process, you're able to kind of navigate through them. To your point about that high maintenance, low profit client paradox, I don't always see it in the lower paying clients. I sort of see it really in just the value metrics of people in general, because I have lower paying clients that are just simply fantastic to work with.
Oh, for sure. No, I'm not saying that they're all bad, but yes. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So, but I will say, many years ago, I'm not going to say how many, I used to wait tables. I don't know how many, but have you ever waited tables before?
I did a lot.
So it was
everybody should do that, by the way. Like, if you want
100%
to understand people and be kind, you got to do it for a year of your life. Something in the service industry. It doesn't have to be waiting tables, but you have to do that to understand society, I think.
Yeah, Carl Jung never made this reference, but I would like to do an addition to his books and his psychology around everyone should wait tables to deal with their egos and their shadows, because that is the best way to learn humility, right? Like knowing that you're doing this. But I can remember working in the service industry, and how many times you would just bust your ass all day long for this table, and they would leave like $1, and it's like, dude. What in the hell do you think you're here? Like that, I'm not your slave, but you know what? It is what it is. But that whole idea of the high maintenance, low profit client paradox is never more apparent than in the service industry, is it? So it's just like restaurants specifically, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've talked a ton about hiring the right client. How do we fire the wrong client? And one thing I will say is, and I say this, I don't usually say it about business, but I say it about life. When a friendship ends, it doesn't mean it wasn't good before. It's not linear, so you have to remember that. So when it's time to say goodbye, sometimes it's bad from the beginning and you probably should have gotten rid of that client or that person in your life quicker. But I think the first thing to remember is if it's, a regular at your restaurant that no longer likes the fact that you're charging more because you're now serving craft beer instead of only Bud Light, or if it's a client you've been working with since you started your company, but they haven't grown the way you have, or they don't like your new pricing model or whatever it is, it doesn't mean that they're not good. It doesn't mean that you didn't have a great relationship with them before. And you have to, kind of put on your big boy pants and say, and do what, break up the right way. Don't do it via text, basically, have a conversation, be kind, acknowledge the good relationship and then tell them why you need to move on.
Yeah. Send them a text message, like we said earlier, and just say, it's not you, it's me. It's like,
right.
You're great. It's just, this is me. No, I think, I'll tell a story. I was in a relationship with someone for 5 years, and we were engaged to be married, and I thought she was my forever person. And it turned out that she wasn't. And I knew that towards the last year and a half so of the relationship. I knew that this was not going to go the direction. And it wasn't that I was right and she was wrong. It's just that we had different values on what the end game looked like. And she was going in a direction of her own, and I was going in a direction of my own. And we recognized that pretty early in the last roughly 2 years of our relationship, we started to see these patterns. And we had conversations about it. And both of us sort of knew where it was. I think we both subconsciously knew where it was ultimately going, but we didn't listen to our angels on our shoulders. Like, we didn't listen to our voice, because we're like, we're just going to make this work. Like, we're going to do counseling, whatever it is, we're just going to make it work. And sometimes that's helpful. Like, sometimes counseling is helpful and you can find a way through that, navigate through it. But if your value systems are so diametrically opposed, there's no amount of counseling on the planet that's going to be able to help you line those up. If you don't believe in the same types of things, and you both don't have the same long-term objectives, and there's no way that any counseling is going to help that. And so, similar to a working relationship, if you get to the point where you're starting to see the writing on the wall and the patterns are starting to elicit themselves, and I hate the word firing, but it is what it is. I think you have to have a come to Jesus moment with them in a collaborative capacity and have a conversation with them and just lay it out. Like, just be honest and transparent. Like, here's where we stand right now. And there's no reason you have to be a dick about it. Just like, let's just have a meeting. Like, how do you feel this is going from your perspective? And they're going to share their insights, and you have to be candid and forthright and share your insights. Like, this is where I see us going. And I don't honestly think that our communication is aligned. I don't think our communication channels are lined up. I don't think our values are lined up. I think we are diametrically opposed on too many things that no matter any type of therapeutic intervention is going to help us. And I think that's really all there is to it. I don't think you need to overcomplicate it. And I'd like to jump back. Early in the process, it's really, 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 really crystally important that you have contracts that are outlining the expectations of what this looks like. Like, don't mess around, man. Get a contract in writing. It's like, what's it called when you get married? The prenup? Like, have a freaking prenup. This is what the relationship is going to do. This is the services that we're going to offer in exchange for whatever it is that we're going to do for you. This is what it looks like. And have an attorney look it over. Don't play around. Like, because I've made that mistake early in my career. Like, I can't tell you how important it is to have it in writing, a statement of work that outlines the expectations from not just like the tactical things that you're going to do, but sort of like, I actually include my values in my contracts with my clients. Like, this is what we're now bringing to the table, and this is what we expect in this collaboration: open and clear communication, honesty, transparency. We're going to have weekly meetings to talk about what works and what doesn't work, and we're going to work at this together to build an empire for you, or we're not. And so, fast forwarding, if you have that contract, it's really clear to sort of look down and say, Jim, you're expecting this of us. we're not capable of providing that for you, or we prefer to operate this way and you're refusing to budge on whatever it is, like your differences, like have an open, mature adult conversation about it. We don't need to sling mud at each other and just agree to part ways. And that's all there is to it. And if you have the contract stabilized, then, that divorce is rather easy.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Have you ever had a client, so this has happened to me, I don't know, let's say 3-4 times, where not that you get ghosted, but the client clearly, they've reached out, they want to work with you, but they never really made the time to do marketing or to grow their business. And so it becomes, so for the first couple of months, you kind of reaching out like, hey, what do you think of the first draft? What do you think of the comp? What do you think of this idea? Whatever it is. And you get maybe trickles back. And then eventually you just have to stop following up because you're not, they haven't made the time for you. They've hired you and in the old days, they had paid me half of the budget, right? But they've never made us important as part of the process. They sort of were getting in their own way. I don't know if that ever happened to you, but I always found that interesting. And then, there's a point where you just don't talk to them anymore.
No, I've not been ghosted. I have had, I have to say, I've been relatively blessed in the types of clients that I've had for most of my career, especially in my new business, Fusion Creative. I did have early on in my Fusion photography business where I was just doing traditional photography. I did have some snafus that didn't necessarily turn out the way I had envisioned them, but I've never had anybody ghost me, but I have had poor communication. And for me, communication is everything, like just everything. Go figure, I like to talk. But, it's everything for me in my relationships, my friendships, my children. Like I'm very transparent about how I parent. And I carry that same ethos into my business and professional relationships, because if you can't communicate effectively with each other, then how are you going to solve problems when it requires communication, right? And so I'm a very big fan on having established meeting schedules with your clients, established check-ins. I actually ask them to give us sort of like a feedback at the end of each quarter. Where are we excelling? Where are there gaps? Where could we do better? And I ask them candidly in a conversation, like, I need you to fill this out and tell me exactly what are we doing wrong. So it's really important that you're always in a perpetual state of learning, because, how do you get better if you don't learn? And if you just, if you think you have the answers, like, what's the point? So I encourage everyone that if you do have these divorces with your clients, that you had a role in it, even if it was just simply your values weren't aligned, but be very clear on doing sort of a self-audit, a self-check-in with yourself to see like, okay, this denigration occurred because of why, and talk to your team members if you have team members, or, talk to your spouse or your friends, like, because certainly you're sharing these stories with your friends, like, how could I have handled this a little bit differently, and going forward, how can I improve upon that? So it's really important to have that sort of reflective state, if you will.
Right. No, absolutely. And so, in the examples of these clients that sort of disappeared, it was more of a, what do you think about this? Hey, Jim, I'm really busy this week. I'll get back to you next week. And I feel like it's an example from the other side, which is if you hire someone to work in your company, if you hire a firm to market for your company, if you hire anybody to do something for you, and then you don't provide them the resources to do their job. So imagine, hiring some, they come in, they sit at the desk and you're like, okay, well, just sit here and we'll get back to you in 2 days. Right now, just look through this handbook. That's not really good onboarding. And so, be ready to do that hiring. On the other side, we're ready to do the work. But if you've made the commitment and you said, listen, this is my New Year's resolution, I'm going to get my marketing in check, I'm going to grow my business, and then you're not ready to be part of that relationship, then, why did you wasted your money and your time, basically. You've got to, it's not like you can just say like, okay, marketing, go do your thing, and come back and, I have more money. There's usually, as time goes by, there's less of that, I would say. In some cases, you gotta learn the brand, you gotta learn the people. We, at the very beginning, we're talking to clients every day, and then, then it becomes weekly or monthly or whatever it becomes, depending on the client. But they have to be ready. They have to give that feedback. Otherwise, we're doing our own marketing, so we don't know. I know how plumbers work, but I don't know how your plumbing company works. I know how restaurants work. I don't know your restaurant yet, so teach me, that you've got to be part of that value, I think.
Yeah, what I hear you saying is that you should be systematizing your process, especially as it surrounds your onboarding. And it does a couple of things. Not only does it give you clarity and insights onto what your client expects from you, but it also enables you to sort of understand everything that they are so that you can better support them in whatever endeavors that you're trying to support them. But more than anything else, that systemization also trains you habitually so that you're consistent in how you engage with everybody. So whether it's your communication, the style, the frequency, all the different things, if you can systematize that and standardize it, obviously you're going to be making tweaks and adjustments for every client. But some of those core principles and some of those core processes and procedures can be standardized and systematized so that as you grow as a business, you're better equipped to scale, you're better equipped to train your own employees, but more importantly, you're better equipped to service the people that you're being paid money to service, and you're consistent across all that. Because one of the things I see in a lot of the clients I work with sometimes is there's no consistency in their output because they haven't taken the time to have clarity on their foundational principles and systematizing some of the processes and procedures that should be systematized, whether it's how they post on social media, whether it's how they respond to clients, or even just something as simple as how they greet their clients when they come in the door, answer telephones. Like there's one client we're working with right now where the front office team, there's no consistency in how they engage with their clients. When you walk in the door, sometimes they don't greet them or they're busy tapping away at the computer and the client has to sit there for a few minutes. And these are things that we observed in our audit. Or when you call them on the phone, it's like, it's not always the same voice. It's not always the same messaging. It's not always the same type of greeting. And if you're a recurring customer and you in the space of using this service on a regular basis, like it sort of throws you off. Like, have you ever gone to a Chick-fil-A? No matter what you do through the drive-thru, they greet you the exact same way. Like everyone says the exact same thing. They have the same cadence, the same operational procedures, the same frequency, the same consistency. And it's like that experience makes everything more optimized on both sides of the coin.
Right. No, you're right. Yeah, you've got it. Marketing can't fix a business that doesn't serve its clients well. So that's
point.
Them serving their clients. And again, those are the clients that I've learned to spot the desperation of some people when they come in, like whether it's they never got their business off the ground or they desperately need to grow it, by 200% over the next couple of years, and it's just about money. And once you start asking questions and it's clear that they don't have any passion for the business, the reason that marketing isn't working, their current marketing isn't working is because you can get someone to come to a restaurant once. I could do that all day long, but to get them to come back the next time, that's another conversation. That's another team. Marketing's part of it, but if your GM sucks or your hostess sucks and that person's not coming back. So marketing looks like it's failing, but it's really, it's part of that team.
It's the relationship, really. It's the experience. It's the story and the narrative. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a restaurant that had exceptional, just to borrow the metaphor, exceptional food, but the service sucked, or the experience was not optimal, or it took forever to get my food, or the service was rude, or whatever it is. And so for me personally, I'm all about the experience, and I'd rather sacrifice some quality on the food if the experience that I was engaged with was phenomenal, and it's more memorable that way. And then people don't buy your product; they buy the experience they get with your product. And so that's not to say that you should have a shitty product. Like, you should still be having qualitative output, but if you can spend a lot of the same energy on the quality of your product, on the experience that you give your client, you're setting yourself up for a win-win scenario across the board.
Oh yeah. Oh, with food, especially my wife and I, we say this all the time, that you don't go, because we have date night every week, and when we go out, we try all different restaurants, and we always talk about, some are good and some are bad, and you don't go out to eat for food. Like, you go out to eat to get out of your house, unless, I guess maybe some people eat out every day and, that they just never want to cook. But there are so many options for fast meals and quick meals and good meals. When you go to a restaurant, you want to be taken care of. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the goal. Like, you don't, like you said, you don't want crappy food, but you're not going there to be fed. You're going there to be treated well. You're going there for the ambiance. You're going there for the conversation outside of the home with all the clutter. We sort of escape the kids for the night. That's what you're looking for. And if some people in that environment are sort of trampling on that expectation, well, then it doesn't matter how great the food is. And that's with everything. Like, it's all about, I have an expectation. Are you delivering on it? So whether it's a marketing firm or a restaurant or a plumber, we go in with an expectation. Like you said, has that been, as a brand, have you sort of broadcast, what they can expect? Has that been, formally introduced to them so that they know what to expect? And then did you deliver on it? And if you don't, then that's when there are problems.
Yeah, I mean, I still go to restaurants for foods. So
I want to. I'm not saying I don't eat when I'm there, but
yeah, I don't go to the restaurant just to meet the servers. I think the food should be good, but I guess what I was saying, sorry if I misconstrued that. I think it should be a quantity, quality, qualitative relationship experience. Like, you should be focusing on the experience just as much as you're focusing on the quality of your product. That's really, I guess, where I was going with that.
Right.
So, I'm not going to go back to a restaurant over and over if the food is just no good, right?
Right. I mean, certainly it can't be bad, but I think more than anything is there's so many options now that by and large, the food is pretty good at most restaurants if they're around for a year or two, right? There are exceptions to that. There are places that I wonder why they're still in business, but then why am I picking this one over that one? Sometimes it's location. Sometimes it's, I know a person there. Sometimes it's, I've been going there for so long. So I know, I've been listening to some of your podcasts. You love Seth Godin, right? Is that one of your, yeah. So his be the best in the world, right? So what means be the best restaurant in the world? Sometimes it's just that you're around the corner. Sometimes it's that you really do have the best burger in the whole world. And so when you go out, what are you expecting from that person? What are you expecting from that business? What makes them the best in the world at that exact moment? And yeah, I mean, sometimes it's, I just want a greasy burger, and it doesn't have to be the best because it's easy, it's comfortable, and I like the servers. Sometimes it's, I want to be wowed by this food, and that's what I expect at that point too. So
yeah, we went to a really cool new restaurant that opened up here in Charlotte last night, and it was really interesting to me. It was, they positioned themselves as a Spanish European style eatery, but yet they have a name that just does not match the vibe. It's just interesting to me that they would call it what they did. And so I asked about it, and the server didn't know why it was called that, which is interesting because the name is unique.
Okay.
Like, if you have a unique name, you should make sure that your team knows why it's called this, because the name is a very Americano, like Western type of name, but the food was amazing. But it was like these small tapas, Spanish style food, and it was really exotic fare, and the chef was a phenomenal. But there was just no alignment on sort of like the brand of it and the messaging of it, and the servers knew nothing about it. And it kind of, I was just sitting there thinking, my marketing eye was thinking about how important it is. And then you go to their website, and their website is just really boring and blah, doesn't really talk anything about what's going on. They market that they have live music and local Charlotte cover bands that come in and sing, but there's nothing on the website about it. Then you go to their social media, and there's nothing about that. And I was just thinking, like, there's a lot of missed opportunities here for this business. So I called Monica, my business development director, and I was like, get them on the phone and get us a meeting because we can help them, because that's a great opportunity for me. But it's really important that, as a small business, especially a new business, and here in Charlotte, I forget where you hail from, but there's literally a new restaurant that opens up every freaking week here in Charlotte. Like, it's a really competitive market now. And so it's really important that if you have good food, which they had phenomenal food, that the messaging and their marketing matches up with the concept of their food, and none of it does. And I was just thinking, man, they really missed the boat on this one in terms of how they're marketing themselves and how they're positioning themselves. Because, for me, their masterpiece is the fact they have really good food, but the decor inside is just amazing. It's this really cool vibe. It's not Charlotte-esque at all. And yet their marketing and everything else they're doing is sort of like doing what everyone else does. It's like they literally sound like every other restaurant. So my thought was, man, there's a way to position this as a really kind of unique dining experience that you're not going to find everywhere in Charlotte. And they've missed the boat on that. And again, it all centers around the experience that we had. From the minute we walked in the door, I was like, wow, this place got the decoration right. They got cool music going on. The lighting's not too dark. It's really dim. And the tables are really cool. And the food preparation was just beautiful. But the messaging that they're telling everyone else didn't even come close to that. So it's just like, anyway, it's really important to have that marketing branding message really clear on that.
Right. And so I don't know the name of it, but so you had the experience of the messaging didn't match didn't match what was delivered, but you liked what was delivered. In other people's cases, maybe it didn't match and they are unsatisfied because they expected something that was very Charlotte. I don't know what that means, but apparently there's that vibe. And so they expected something that was more like a sports bar or whatever. I don't know what the brand matches up to. And then they went in and they're like, oh, this is too fancy. I don't like it.
Totally.
My guess is this is like cool portions and a lot of like drizzles and stuff. So, I mean, my dad hates that crap. Like I want a big burger, I want something big on my plate. I can't deal with these little pieces. So for him, it might be expectations in the other direction where it's not that the marketing was off and they had that ability to improve upon it. It said like, he thought it was one thing and it didn't deliver on that either. So yeah, it's important. It's always, really, I know we're talking about hiring and firing, but we're really, like you said, we're talking about your brand message. If you got to put it out there, you have to think about it, right? You have to, who am I? What is my restaurant? What defines us? What are our colors? What's our style? What's our core mission? And then you have to be confident enough to share that. And sometimes that means turning other people off. I think that's why people don't do it. They're afraid of, if I say what I am, that I can't, not everyone will come to my restaurant. But you don't want everyone to come to your restaurant. You want Deevo to come to your restaurant because he loved it.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of power in saying no. I think a lot of people think, and I thought I was in that boat, that if you say no, then there's not going to be any more opportunities like this. But what the opposite is actually true, because when you're able to say no and you're confident in what it is that you offer and the value and the type of people that you want to attract in your business or your relationship or your life, and you say no to anything that doesn't fit that, it really opens the doors to more suitable opportunities. And it's not like, oh, that window is closed and I'm never going to be able to find a multiple six-figure client again. I closed the door on that one, and what happened is it freed up my team, it freed up my resources, it freed up my bandwidth, it freed up my emotional, just my emotional wherewithal, and I was better able to serve the type of people that I did want to serve in so doing, as opposed to like, oh, I'm never going to find another client again. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I think as you grow, I mean, where I was in my early 20s versus where I am now in my mid 40s, like I'm a different person. Like, there's less of that imposter syndrome. It still creeps in, but I have the confidence to say no. I have the confidence to speak up. I have the confidence to push back, and I have the confidence to listen. Sometimes there are clients that told me things that I thought were ridiculous, and I said, okay, we'll try it. And I was wrong. And so sometimes you have the confidence to do that too. And then you go to the next client and say, hey, let's try this thing. It's really cool. I got this idea from somebody else. So, I think that's what comes with age. I don't know if anyone in their early 20s can do that. Maybe at least not me. It took some time to get there, but I'm glad I did.
It's funny. It's funny how it's all a process. But again, that process itself centers around iterative learning. So you make some mistakes, you have failures. It's an opportunity for you to figure out what went wrong and how could you improve upon that and grow from it. So there's no reason that if you made some of the mistakes that we're talking about right now, that it's the end game for you. Like, be self-aware and understand how could you have handled that situation better and then grow from it.
That's right. Well, that was like the perfect summary. Okay, so I'm not surprised by this. We talked for almost an hour. I kind of knew from our previous conversation that we would. This was awesome. I think we covered most of this topic and a bunch of other ones too. So, Deevo, where can people find you? If they want to work with you. You've got the Unlearn Everything podcast, which is recently rebranded to that. What are all, throw out a couple handles. I'll put them all in the show notes too. But where is the best place for people to find you if they want to work with you, talk to you, just sort of connect?
I do monthly workshops. They're interactive workshops where it's interactive learning. So it's not me, a talking head, just telling you all these sorts of things. We have group breakout sessions and whatnot. You can find that on my website. It's a branding and marketing blueprint workshop. So that's coming up. The website is fusioncreativebranding.com. And you can find me on Instagram at Fusion Photog, short for photography, Fusion Photog. Same as LinkedIn as well. Yeah.
Okay, great. And the podcast is Unlearn Everything. It's about everything. It's Unlearn Everything. It's about, I've listened to a couple of episodes. It's different than this one, but it's great. You go obviously very in depth down a lot of rabbit holes, like you've said. So it's great.
Thank you for letting me talk about that. I'm of the feelings that most everything that we have been taught, and I'm in my 40s, and it's amazing to me once you sort of set off consciously to go down the rabbit hole of discovery of learning, you find out that most everything that you have been taught your entire life is incorrect. It's a lie for the most part, from history to economics to everything. And so the podcast brings on really amazing guests who are experts in their field, who have taken the time to operate and provide a different sort of paradigm on how to do everything. And so we have conversations, as you said, around rabbit holes of that and unlearn all the narratives that we've been taught.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much. I hope to have you back on again. Keep this conversation going. I know we're connected on LinkedIn, and we'll probably talk there. And yeah, it's just good to talk to other people in the space. So
yeah, I hope so. That'd be great. I would love to. And you're going to come on our show, I think, right?
Yes, I'm going to come on your show. I'm going to talk about guilt. I've got that's one of my sort of overarching drivers in life is that guilt is our best emotion. If you want to be your best self in business, in life, it's to kind of follow that road. So my mom's I'm Italian, so Italian mom growing up, there was a lot of guilt, and instead of letting it hold me down, I used it as my roadmap for doing stuff. So I'm gonna talk.
Yeah. Well, this would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, it will be. So we'll do that next time. Thank you, Deevo. I'm going to hit stop now. Everybody,
thank you, Jim.
Like, subscribe, follow Deevo, check out his workshop, check out his podcast. It's great. And thank you so much for joining us.